Hello, welcome back. So in the last activity, we learned about scientific notation, but we did it in a very small, specific way where you had a whole number and a power of 10. We're going to get a little technical and just look at the components now. So this is scientific notation, this 7 times 10 to the 4th. In order for it to be scientific notation, it has to have a coefficient, so in this case 7, that is less than 10 or 1 or above, okay? So 1 point something all the way up until 9.999999. Really what you need to know from that is you cannot have a coefficient that's 0 point anything. You can't have that. And you cannot have a coefficient that's got 2 numbers in front of the decimal. Neither of those are okay. If you have a decimal in your coefficient, it has to be something that looks like this. It can have as many decimal places behind the decimal as you want, but there can only be 1 in the ones place. You can't have a tens over here. Okay, so this is what it has to look like. And then, of course, it has to have a power of 10. Now, I want you to think back to that video where we were pulling out powers of 10, right? What we did here, in this case, 7 times 10 to the 4th. So if you're going from here to here, 7 times 10,000 because 10 to the 4th is 10,000. If we went backwards, you pulled out 10,000 because there's 4 zeros and made it 1, so 10,000. And then you multiplied it by 7 because that's how many there were. All of these are equivalent, okay? Now, it's simpler when the coefficient is a whole number because typically what you have to do is write the whole number and then tack on this many zeros. That's fine. That's easy to do. But let's look at one that's a little bit more difficult. What if we had 430,000, okay? Now, there is a reason that this one is a little bit more difficult. There's a couple of reasons. One, there's not just one number, there's 2, okay? So at this point, I can't just look at the number of zeros. It won't work that way, all right? What I do know is that my coefficient, remember, has to be between 1 and 10. So this 4 and this 3, these are my significant digits. Those are the numbers that I'm going to use to create my coefficient. And because it's got to be between 1 and 10, I'm going to make my coefficient 4.3. Okay? 4.3. Now, I know it's going to be to a power of 10. If I start between the 4 and the 3, really what this power of 10 is doing, like we said, is moving my decimal point. So between the 4 and the 3, I moved it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4.3 times 10 to the 5th. What I need you to understand here is that this is not about how many zeros are in it. There are 4 zeros here, but the exponent I use is 5, okay? Because really what you're doing is you are multiplying it and moving the decimal point. So this is the same thing as 4.3 times 100,000. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places behind that first number, so there are going to be 5 zeros in my power of 10. That's where the 10 to the 5th comes from. So if I made it 257 million, okay? I know that my coefficient is going to start with 2.57. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 numbers after the 2. After that first number, there are 8 numbers, which means my power of 10 has 8 zeros, which means it's 2.57 times 10 to the 8th. 8 places behind the ones, 8 zeros. Okay, 10 to the 8th. Which makes sense because if I start between the 2.57, I'm going to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. places. Okay, let's go the other way. Let's say I gave you, this is a little bit easier. Let's say I gave you 5.3 times 10 to the fourth, and I said, what is this in standard notation? Okay, you could do the whole thing. You could do 5.3, and you know you're going to multiply it by 10,000 because 10 to the fourth is 10,000, 4 zeros. Okay, but really what you need to remember is that these move my decimal point. Because my exponent is 4, the easiest way to do it is start with my pencil between the 5 and the 3 and move it 1 space, 2 space, 3 spaces, 4 spaces. And then put zeros in my placeholders. Okay? So 5.3 times 10 to the fourth is 53,000. I moved it 4 places. That's it. Okay? I'm going to do one more, just cut and dry simple. And then I'm going to let you try some. We have 5.732 times 10 to the sixth. I'm going to rewrite my coefficient. Start with my pencil here. It's a positive 6, which means my decimal point is going to move 6 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anything that doesn't have a number, I put a 0 in as a placeholder. Move my decimal point out from between the 5 and 7 and put it on the end. So my number is $5,732,000. Okay? So just remember, this exponent is not about zeros in the answer, it's about moving the decimal point. Okay? If my exponent is 6, then there are going to be 6 digits behind this 5. They don't all have to be 0, it just has to be 6 places. 1, 2, 3, and then another 4, 5, 6. All right? Okay, the next activity, you're going to be doing this.